to welcome our members to this meeting. And firstly, may I welcome the Honourable Maran. Please, honourable members, if you would just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Before I introduce myself, Chair, I had to wake up 5 o'clock this morning to be here. You are telling us now that at the last moment you have decided for this meeting to be a virtual hybrid session. I think it's unfair towards me. Those who can't be here in person is those who are staying or in Cape Town or on the peripheries of Cape Town. I hear now from you that this will now be a hybrid session, which I think is unfair. I'm staying 170 kilometers away from this particular venue. I had to wake up early in the morning. I think this is just unfair. So after this particular meeting, we're going to have an agricultural meeting. Are you then saying after this meeting, I can go home and log in virtually from my home for that agricultural meeting? I just think it's unfair. Good morning to everyone. Chairperson, good morning to you. Sorry, good morning to you, MEC, HOD. My name is Piet Maran. I'm a member of this committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Maran. Those members online.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, and good morning to the department. My name is Kayla Murray. I think I just wanted to start off my apologies to the Chair and to the committee and those in person today.
Thank you. I don't hear any members online.
Chair?
I do note on the Teams link that the Honourable Murray is in the meeting. I will give her an opportunity to introduce herself later on. With that, Minister, welcome to you and to officials. Please, would you mind just also introducing yourselves? Thank you.
Anton Brodel, MEC, responsible for Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, as well as Cape Nature.
Good morning, Gerard Gerber, Head of Department.
Good morning all. Karen Chippy, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, CD, Environmental Sustainability.
Morning, everyone. Fezeka Mabusela, Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, CD, Development Planning.
Good morning, Johannes Fritz, Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Director Financial Management, CFO.
Good morning, Mohammed Bayat, CFO, Cape Nature.
Good morning, Ashley Naidu, CEO, Cape Nature. Thank you.
Morning, Shiraz Ismail, Cape Nature.
Morning, Anwar Ghafoor, Director Strategic and Operational Support from the department.
Good morning, everybody. Gottlieb Arnse, Chief Director, Environmental Quality from the department.
Morning, Ayub Mohammed, Chief Director, Environmental Governance, Policy Coordination Enforcement from the department.
Good morning, Francois Wiest from the department, also Program Manager.
Can we go there to the back row? Paul?
Arlene Larosse, Director for Biodiversity and Coastal Management with the department. Thank you.
Good morning, Joy Lena, Director, Air Quality Management.
Tia Jordan, Development Facilitation from DEPI.
Good morning all, Hussein Isaacs, Director, Climate Change.
Morning, Zahir Tawfi from the department, Director, Development Management.
Good morning, Chiquita Keith, Acting Director, Environmental Governance from the department.
Good morning, Ron Mukanya, Director, Sustainability in the department.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ahmed Basir, Director, Environmental Law Enforcement. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Kobus Mandra, Director, Development Management.
Members, good morning. Milena Jacobs, Director, Development Planning, Intelligence and Research, and also Acting Director for Spatial Planning.
Good. Thank you very much. Again, welcome, and we're grateful that we can record you all as being present in the minutes of this meeting. Honourable Maran?
Chair, I just want you to check with the Honourable Murray. whether she is indeed present in this particular meeting and whether we had a quorum to start this meeting. It can't be that the switch on of your laptop confirms that whether you are present. It's those that have asked for this meeting to be virtual who can't confirm now whether they are present in this meeting or not. I'm really not sure whether we are quorum.
Thank you. I'm being informed that unfortunately she's just dropped off this meeting, and I do hope that she will be able to join us as well as other members. I sincerely do hope. And I'll ask the procedural officer perhaps just to make contact and make sure that we reach the minimum number of members to be able to be quorate. For now, Honourable Maran, the decision making will only be later during the meeting, and I would like to propose that we proceed with our interrogation of the budgets as well as the presentation. We've asked the department just to prepare a brief presentation on what the budget holds and what we can expect should this budget be approved. And with that, first over to you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you to the Honourable Maran for being present. Honourable Chair, according to the World Economic Forum, the top 4 risks the world will be facing over the next decade, all to do with the environment, extreme weather events, critical change to earth systems, biodiversity, ecosystem collapse, and natural resource shortages. We also understand, and you've been part of a very difficult winter, disruptive winter with 2 storms in June and September, and also the coastal storm surges that we had. Huge damage, up to 3.5 billion rand. And we had a very busy fire season. We had to shift the funding twice so that we can get enough aerial resources going to combat the fires, etc. So I personally think it's a critical role that this department and Cape Nature are busy playing, as well as securing the future. So within this department and Cape Nature, the role we play in protecting our biodiversity, it's crucial for future generations. We also have a crucial role to play in the when it comes to infrastructure planning. Personally, I think that we cannot plan without climate change, thinking about climate change going forward in the future. If you've been out in our communities, whether it was the floods in the winter or the fires, you need to ask yourself, yeah, in a lot of instances, it's climate change, but also in a lot of instances, we should never have built houses where we built them. And there's a huge responsibility on our councils approving certain developments, etc. Going forward, we also will need to look as a province, and we sit a lot with our infrastructure department on the rethink of long-term planning and how you redesign your bridges and roads, etc. Because remember the floods that we dealt with, the 154 roads that was washed away, etc. We fixed that roads very quickly, and it was necessary to get the economy going, etc. But we've done it on the same kind of lines. So if we're going to have another wet winter, we need to then re-spend money on the same kind of work. So we haven't rethink on how to rebuild the bridges, etc., on different lines and heights so that we can accommodate climate change. So that's for us going to be our role within transversal governments within this province is going to be crucial going forward. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the HOD. Thank you, HOD.
Thank you. Good morning once again. As Minister, I've also touched on the portfolio that the Vote 9 is responsible is critical in terms of the human rights to be protected, to be advanced, and both in terms of servicing present but also future generations. If one looks at the the ecological infrastructure, the provincial assets that we manage as Vote 9, with Cape Nature as the management authority, and the importance of those areas in terms of all the ecosystem services that flows from that, and what that means for the quality of life of our citizens, how it enables our economy. Then we certainly have our work cut out for us in terms of this budgeting cycle, in terms of the budget crunch, because as the fiscal envelope is shrinking, it's not as if the demand for our core services, our core areas of delivery are decreasing. And therefore, it's an ongoing process with the collective, with the team, look at, how do we make sure that we are focusing on those areas that have the highest impact for the citizen, that serve the greatest need. And therefore, in our planning process, in the budgeting processes, that is front of mind in terms of the tough choices that we as collectively as a province had to make, but also, of course, within each vote. And then to also make sure that we protect, the critical areas. So we had to look at the particular areas. It's the last year of delivery against our 5-year departmental strategic plan. We also, of course, delivering against the provincial priorities, and a critical role that the department plays and the Vote 9 plays in terms of the growth for jobs and the other strategic priorities in the province. The well-being and safety, the One Health approach, more and more the environmental quality aspects of that work coming to the fore. If one turns to the budget and the Vote 9 allocation, was informed by the strategic priorities, so ongoing process of review, and then very particular in terms of getting to the new annual performance plan, and then in terms of the budget, has allocated. In terms of the distribution within the vote between the department and Cape Nature, in terms of the summary document that we provided, it goes from in terms of the department, 319 million in year one of the MTF 24-25. Cape Nature 308 million. So we very close still to 50%, 50.9% in terms of the department's portion of that, and Cape Nature 49.1%. That's for 24-25. If one looks at the third year of the MTF, it shifts slightly, so 325 million, 49.4% for the department, and the rest for Cape Nature. In terms of the total allocation, in terms of the increase, it was only an increase of 37.9 million from the 587 million to 627 million, which is only an increase of 6.8%. And we were well aware of the fact that if one looks across all the votes, there was a lot of pressure across the province. And although we were making sure that the critical work that Vote 9 have got to perform, that we highlighted those risks, those priorities. At the end, it's the 6.8% increase is what in terms of the allocation. Part of that, and a big part of that, was the shifting of the green economy ecosystem support project, which shifted from the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. This is a critical project in terms of the growth for job strategy, and the support provided through this project to the private sector, to those that specifically want to take up opportunities in terms of energy and water focus as part of that green ecosystem, green economy ecosystem. So we're excited that that's been shifted. This was the transition period. We're also looking forward to where we will be taking this project over the MTF. But there's the 14.4 million. And then the realignment in terms of the projects, in terms of the waste management and the housing market studies, which the detail is indicated. And then the consumer price index increase. So Yeah, 4.8%. If one looks at from 24, 25 across to the MTF to 26, 27, 4.8% increase. There's the detail in terms of the revenue. Primarily, still the equitable share, the 98.2%, going up to 99.5%. And in terms of our own receipts, in terms of how, and that's for the department, in terms of, and we do, of course, provide the detail, it's primarily the Section 24G administrative fines, and then the Provincial Revenue Fund and the small portion in terms of the conditional grant expanded public works program, the 3.3 million, only 0.5%. In terms of the allocations, very specific, identified, earmarked and priority allocations, so very specific things to be achieved with that allocation. The regional socioeconomic project, RSIP, that Francois manages, remains a critical focus. And yes, that did come under pressure in terms of the allocation, just because of the pressure that was on the entire vote, but we're able to maintain the program, even though reduced from what we originally hoped it would be, but from 13.3 million to 15.8 million in the third year of the MTF. The housing market studies, this was critical work in terms of the inclusionary housing policy framework that we developed in the province. The immediate work that followed that was the support to the municipalities in terms of each municipality developing an inclusionary housing policy for each municipality, and then the specific work in response to that policy. So the housing market studies specifically looking at the market to be served in terms of the delivery that's happening in terms of housing. And of course, it's different from housing market to housing market. So there was the round one where we were looking at that specific city centers, and there was a need for us to update that in terms of the first studies that we did, and now for round two in terms of additional centers that we're looking at in order to take that work forward with the municipalities. The environmental impact assessment, higher efficiencies, we made very specific proposals to Treasury at the time in terms of what we would be able to achieve in the return on an investment in this area. Unfortunately, because of the budget crunch, the ultimate allocation to this project is less than half of what we hoped it would be. But we still have that budget there, the 3.8 million in year one, and then it down to 1.3 million in the third year. But we still we're looking at what we're able to achieve with a budget that is allocated. We are only able to now make contract appointments because of what the budget looks like over the MTF, but still it's important efficiencies to be achieved because of what it means for across the economy in terms of this area of work. There you see the green economy project. We don't at this stage have an allocation for the third year, so that of course is an area of concern. We're taking over the program and we're taking it forward. But with Treasury and the partners in the green economy space and the growth for jobs, we're busy with what will year three look like. At this stage, there's no allocation in the third year. And then you see the compensation of employees, a significant portion of the department in terms of the department's portion of the budget. Now we'll get to that in detail. But yeah, 263 million compensation of employees in 24-25, going up to 282 million in the third year. The Sustainable Water Program, we're also concerned that's the allocation as it stands. There's a lot of work underway on the back of the 15-year drought and water response plan and our own review of the Sustainable Water Management Plan of the province. But in terms of taking that program forward, discussions underway with the partners in that space, because the allocation for the program at this stage in terms of the budget that's available is very small over the NTF, 1.9 million to 1.7 million in the third year. Waste management, a critical area for the province. That's the budget that we were able to secure, the 372 million in the 24-25. But we are busy with a strategic program with Treasury in terms of addressing waste management in the province. So work underway in terms of updating the current, in terms of the analysis of what the situation is in each municipality. And then the project development out of that in terms of supporting the municipalities to really get waste management to a different level in the province. The proactive screening of the school sites, this was identified with the partners as a critical area because of the demand on the Department of Education and the fact that if we don't proactively work on the land assembly, then some of those projects, the processes that are required for some of those projects can take, can take up to 18 months in order for those processes to be concluded. So this was to proactively look at those school sites in the province and related work in terms of our spatial mapping of our EIA decisions and the efficiencies in terms of the 24G processes. For that work collectively, there 6.2 million 24-25 and 1.8 million in 25-26. So in considering the total earmarked and priority allocations, that's the allocation that we have. The pie chart just indicates what in terms of the total budget for the department across the programs. And then the economic classification, obviously critical picture because that highlights the pressure also that we're under. Our service delivery model as a department is and has also legislated, registered professionals that are providing the service directly. But yes, with the cost of living adjustments as agreed at the national level, the budget under increasing pressure in terms of the portion of the budget that goes to compensation of employees, which means that there are very few project funding that remains. In other words, we're not able to easily cushion budget reductions by moving a project out or scaling it back because of the across the economic classification in 24-25, it's 82% of the allocation for the department is compensation of employees. And there you see the goods and services at 12.9%, transfer and subsidies 2.6%, and the payments for capital assets 2.1%. So the department's flexibility in terms of our discretionary funds is limited as the cost of employment portion of the budget is increasing. So that does represent a high risk due to the decreasing baseline allocation. We highlight the fact that the GEES specific allocation. I've touched on those projects, and that's also where the consultant items then come in. So the allocation of 19 million increasing from 8.5 million from 23-24. The transfers and subsidies, there's the transfers to the biosphere reserves, which is a critical investment. One for every R1, the return on that investment and what the biosphere reserves are able to access, 39 rand. So critical investment for us in terms of what the biosphere reserves means for conservation in the province and the impact that they're having. And then the RSIP transfers the 7.3 million to the municipalities. And we do indicate then what that looks like in 24-25 in terms of the graph there across those municipalities. With that, I want to ask Dr. Ashley Naidu in terms of the Cape Nature, the brief summary there, whether Dr. Naidu wants to go into that.
May I just, before Dr. Naidu starts, say a warm welcome to you, Dr. Naidu. I believe this is your first meeting with the Standing Committee in your newly appointed position. I hope you'll have a wonderful and long and productive stay in that position, and we're looking forward to your contributions and looking forward to hearing from you now as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As the head of department and morning to the honorable members, as head of department says, Cape Nature allocation is in the region of just over 300 million. And in addition to that, we have the disaster prevention measures allocation, the infrastructure upgrades, and some funding towards our expanded public works program. For Cape Nature, that goes into our 4 functional units. Administration of governance, and there was a specific question at our MTech presentation why that's larger than usual. But in our governance and administration allocation, we include the IT services and IT infrastructure and building and facilities. So that sits essentially in the office of the CEO under the program 1. The next large area of work we have is the biodiversity capabilities, and that really is our intelligent base for spatial planning and policy advice, followed by the operations, which is our people on the ground taking care of the reserves. And finally, with Mr. Ismail here on my right, we look at ecotourism and access. That does bring in some contribution to us, although if our entire budget is around the 400 million mark, Mr. Ismail and his unit bring in about 60 million a year, which helps in terms of revenue. That's the budget. We have experienced a slight decrease in our expanding public works program. And maybe Mohammed, you can talk about how we've adjusted for that so we don't decrease our business targets for the following year. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and morning, Chair. I think in terms of the EPWP, what we've done is we've reduced some of the administrative costs related to the EPWP project so that we could still keep the number of jobs and our targets in line. So what we would do is then, because we have a good flow of staff over the year, we see where we can save costs in terms of the timing between filling as the jobs as one person exits and new people start. There is a time frame, so we get savings from that. And not only that, we can save administrative overheads and shared costs that we can look at, and that helps us still maintain our job numbers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those briefings. I believe that the Honourable Murray was able to rejoin us. He was just kind of initially, she's been with us for quite a while now, but I didn't want to interrupt the HOD or you, Mr. Naidu, Dr. Naidu. So can I just give our members that have since joined us an opportunity to introduce themselves online?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my apologies for not being able to join in this morning, and I thank you in the committee for making.
I see the Honourable Murray is unmuted, but I don't hear her.
Chair, I'm just checking if you can hear me. Okay.
I can see she's speaking. Can we just ask IT to please sort this out? And I presume the same would then apply to the Honourable de Villiers as well.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable de Villiers, we're not able to hear you. We'll give you an opportunity to just speak a little bit later. And please hold back on your questions. We'll gladly use them. I see IT has asked whether we can just take a 5-minute break, if you wouldn't mind. Let's just try and sort out the gremlins, please. Thank you very much. And thank you for understanding. opportunity to introduce themselves. Can we go first to the Honorable de Villiers and then Honorable Murray?
Good morning, Chair, and everybody present. Yeah, sorry for the trouble that we put you through. I'm Peter de Villiers, and I'm a member of this committee.
I'm just glad to hear your voice. Thank you. Honorable de Murray?
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm just checking I'm audible.
Indeed, you are.
Perfect. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to you, to the committee, for making an alternate plan for me. Unexpectedly not well, but I'll try and come in as soon as I can. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Good. Thank you very much. We've had the presentations and I believe you've been able to listen to that. Can we now go over to questions on the budget as presented to us? Honorable Maran, do you have any questions? Can we start with you then?
Just I have a few. Thanks again. Again, good morning to all of you present, Chair. Let me start, Chair, with the issue of waste management. And we know now that NAISNA got a problem. Premier went there with the chairperson of the DA, MEC Simmers, and basically blaming the political leadership for the mess that's going on there. The city of Cape Town, total collapse of their waste management, especially in poor areas. Director was suspended, not political leadership. A director was suspended. And it was said that with these DC case, they might spend a million rand. So what's the difference between NAISNA in the city of Cape Town and what intervention? My understanding is there will be national intervention, there will be intervention from the province. What intervention were there when it comes to the city of Cape Town? Then MEC, again, the environmental commissioner. We know that the previous department have started a process, the public participation process, actually to get that specific clause removed from the provincial constitution and the backlash that they have received from the public out there. And that particular process stopped. Whether there are concerns from this department, why the process has been stopped, and whether the previous offers are still continuing, maybe at a later stage with that particular process, either to get it removed or to appoint the environmental commissioner. We have seen basically in the budget speech from MEC Winger, there's a commitment of 8.8 billion rand from the US for climate finance. And also national government have raised 3.3 billion. And maybe the portion that we will receive from national government, whether there will be enough money to appoint the environmental commissioner. Then my third question, there will be a second round, Chair. In the Blue Book, page 395, it speaks to infrastructure payments. We know, I think 2 years back, we basically established a department that deals with infrastructure, whether it's infrastructure for schools, for roads, whatsoever, it falls under that one department, and whether there's any talks that these particular infrastructure payments and infrastructure that will be done at a later stage, maybe, will it be moved to that particular department? And if not, why not? Chair. Thanks. Let me stop there for now.
Good. Thank you very much. And yes, members, please, if I can ask you to split your number of questions into perhaps 2 or 3 rounds, then we can come back to you. Are there any of the members online that have got questions? Not at the moment. So can I then proceed? Just a few items. I was wondering if you would be able to just explain the situation with unfunded posts as well as other vacancies in the department, because there seems to be a bit of a lack of understanding in that regard. Then secondly, my attention has been drawn over the last few years to the importance of clean air. And that particularly, I think in the Western Cape, we're relatively better off than in some of the other provinces, particularly with coal-fired electricity generating stations and so on. But we have been scaling back on our air quality measurements. And you know, there's this saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. So I'm concerned that if we measure less, that we would be able to also act less in terms of air quality management. So perhaps if you could just explain to us, is there something that we should be concerned about, and to what extent should be concerned about? I do see you've noticed an increase in the use of wood-fired, you know, or wood for heating, etc. I've always, you know, prided myself that, you know, we're less reliant on Eskom since we've installed a closed combustion furnace in the house. So, but now I see perhaps it's not been such a good idea. Then, in terms of environmental impact assessments, I'm grateful to see that the need for quicker turnaround times in issuing environmental authorizations have been noted. And I think a good illustration is, for example, the Rapid School Build program, which requires, you know, environmental authorization at a very, very early stage of the development project development. But this also applies to the private sector. It applies to agriculture and numerous other sectors. So my question is, you know, what can be done? I think environmental impact assessments have been around now for 2 decades or so, and hopefully we've learned a lot of lessons how to streamline that and get greater efficiency, and that we would be able to not only achieve 90% throughput within the prescribed timeframes, but hopefully 100% in future, and even, you know, have the average time decreased. I think that can make a big contribution to economic growth of the province as well. So please, and I do note that you were forced to turn to contract labor, temporary appointments in that regard to speed up. But my impression is that the need for new schools is not going to decrease in 2 or 3 years. As a matter of fact, I think that program may have to be accelerated going forward. And then also on the impact assessments, I've been wondering whether you're able to look in the mirror and say, these are the assessments that we've done or issued over the last 20 years. In these cases, we actually wasted our own time. In these cases, we should have been more strict in terms of what we allowed, etc. So if you wouldn't mind perhaps just sharing with us some of the, I call it the lessons learned, or some of the efficiencies that perhaps can result from the 20 years experience that you've got. Thank you. With that, over to you for responses.
Chair, if I may, the first question from Honourable Mandrang is close to the politics, so let me jump in there. The Environmental Commissioner, you know my stance. I don't think it will add value. And my recommendation to the Premier is you stand up in Parliament and you just say, no, we can't. If I can get the extra 20 million rand, I will put it in alien clearing or air pollution, or we've got a lot of places where you can put those kind of money where it will add value. I don't think it will add value. And maybe we must just be bold and acknowledge it and go on. And I understand if I'm opposition's kind, you will throw it in my face every time, but it's fine. Our country is in serious trouble financially, and we need to cut to the bone this department. I've got a fight with, we need to fight for our right space. Climate change is real and everybody understands that. But as soon as it comes to a budget, then we all jump on education and health and everything else. And government is a big machine. If you don't balance the ship, we're going to end up in trouble. So that's the honest answer on that. On refuge removal, there is a management problem and political problem within a lot of our municipalities, and we must also be honest with that. A lot of these things fall apart because of weak management, and Knysna is one of them. And I'm not going to, and I motivate the Green Scorpions to act against government that doesn't fulfill their mandate. And then they can phone me. I will protect the Green Scorpions. They've already phoned me because of some directives, and I just laughed at them. Said, you cannot drive through a red light stop street and then phone a minister and then to cover. Sorry, the Green Scorpions got a very important job, and they must hit the councils hard because you don't want to listen. And it's within every council's prerogative to decide where they're going to spend their money. And if they want to pile up the waste, then they must also pay the price. So I can't wait to go to court with those municipalities that doesn't want to listen. It's a mess. It's going to end up in a health mess. And we've got now a task team between ourselves, national government, and the municipality. I think the waste is better, not solved yet. But that waste site in Knysna, why it's also so in the face is because it's in the middle of the town. We also need to move that site somewhere else, and I think the team is busy with that. Looking at that, doesn't mean that we take our foot off the pedals in Cape Town or any other municipalities. As long as the municipality's got a plan and stick to that plan, then the Green Scorpions will monitor, the department will monitor, because we're also not going to solve everything just going to court. There's a space where you need to, at the stage you must, because they don't want to listen. But obviously they start with a pre-directive and work with the municipalities. Then they will go into a directive if they don't play ball. And after that, we lay criminal charges. That's it. And the Green Scorpions must go that route. The quicker we get there, the better. And we've got a mandate to protect and to see to it that every citizen has got the right to live in a healthy environment. So I think that's very important from our side. Air pollution is something that I always mention because I'm worried about it. You've mentioned that you cannot manage if you don't measure. Well, you cannot go to court if you don't measure. That's a big issue. Then we cannot take industry on that pollute. So, and we need to put our personnel in a position with the right tools so that they can build the case. Otherwise, we will lose cases. I personally think, Honourable Chair, on EIA that we're doing quite well. The problem, and yes, obviously now with disasters, we can see clearly where you should not be developed. But remember, a lot of those cases, it's municipal planning. It's not within our space. I've also got a problem if you drive past mountains, they allow now people to slope, to take out and to level the playing fields. Where as you go by Gordon Bay, they put it on pillars. Now they start to take out and they level, and that's going to create huge problems going forward. So we need to re-look at our planning, and we're busy talking to municipalities on that. HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Minister. Maybe want to ask Salim Maider, the Director Waste Management, just to, in terms of the waste management issues raised. Obviously, it was a question in terms of the situation in Knysna, but in terms of the work with the City of Cape Town in terms of waste management.
Respected Chair, Honourable Minister and councillors and colleagues in this room. Good morning. Yes, we have been very involved with the waste management in Knysna. We do obviously acknowledge the issues that has come through. From the department side, we've also issued directive and a compliance notice to the municipality, but at the same time, we're also providing that support with the Department of Local Government as well. So some of the key interventions would be the immediate removal of the waste that's been piling up, and for the appointment of an additional service provider to be able to do that. The second issue we're working on is the actual closure of the current transfer station and locating it to another facility. It may not be an exact same transfer station, but something that we can at least temporarily put up, monitor, measure, and also ensure that the environmental authorization for it is also quickly processed so that we can actually do that for Knysna itself. With regards to the City of Cape Town, we do recognize the fact that, yes, the executive director has been suspended. And I've had a meeting with the mayor, the spokesperson of the executive mayor as well in the course of last week, just to look at assistance with regards to waste management as well, because we do realize that there's also some issues that we need to attend to within the city as well. But these are just two of them. The waste management throughout the country is actually in quite a state, but and we're having national talks around waste management and improvement thereof as well. But that is where we are at the moment. So there is definitely a task team that's being established by the 18th, and the implementation plan is the next step to actually ensure that we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. Member Marant touched on the climate change. It's a critical focus for the province. We just last week held an engagement with, as the Western Cape government, with they were at national, the President's Climate Commission was represented, and national departments, municipalities, and then specifically the private sector. In terms of the Western Cape climate change response strategy that we've recently reviewed and the implementation plan. And this engagement was in particular to look at how do we, as a collective, address climate change in terms of the impacts we're already seeing and what's still coming for the province. So there's lots of risk, but there's also opportunity in this space, and a particular focus also on the funding opportunities and different ways of financing. And how do we work together on that? So absolute key focus. Our own resources are limited, and therefore the partnering approach becomes critical in exploring all the alternatives in that space. I don't know whether Corin wants to add to that.
Thank you. And it is an important issue about how national government decides to distribute the money that it's securing internationally. Because I think one of the concerns we have is the just transition plans at the moment are focused very much in the north of the country, and they're focused on what is currently predominantly fossil fuel-based industries making the transition. Western Cape obviously has a very different set of industry requirements in manufacturing, and we're not sure how much of that, if any, will actually be provided to this part of the country, because the plans and the needs for the electricity grid for that just transition are so demanding in the north of the country. I think it is a question we should be asking constantly of national government, but at the moment we have no certainty at all that any of that funding will be directed towards this region.
Thank you, Corin. Member around the question on the infrastructure, critical work underway in the province. So the climate change governance, that's being mainstreamed in the main business of the Western Cape government as part of the Growth for Jobs governance, and climate change and ecological infrastructure being a key focus. So we're busy also reviewing the Western Cape infrastructure framework, and as part of that, the fact that ecological infrastructure is also infrastructure, and how do we look after those provincial assets. And then as part of that discussions, Cape Nature is the management authority of the conservation estate in the province, as well as a support role in terms of the private stewardship areas, so more than 1 million hectares in total. And the asset management that the entity that does in terms of as the management authority in that regard, critical work. So there is no discussions in terms of that shifting to the Department of Infrastructure, But there is ongoing discussions of how we, as a province, manage the ecological infrastructure and manage those provincial assets. And of course, the role within that of Cape Nature, and how do we manage risk, and how do we invest in the infrastructure into the future. In terms of the vacant post, there are two different. The funded post, or what is considered as vacant posts. So often people will simply be communicating the number of vacancies and only be referring to the number of funded vacancies. Because often on departments, in the structures, and as for our department, we have 555 posts on the approved structure of the department, and there's 212 posts on that old structure that's vacant. We are busy. We have been busy with 3 OD processes with the Department of the Premier. One looking at biodiversity and coastal management, one looking at the RSIP work, which we've been busy with for more than a decade, the RSIP work, and then one looking at the water program. And then there was also other work underway in terms of the GIS, in terms of an OD process, in terms of that. But we just met with the Department of the Premier to say we were looking at the different substructures. But we actually have to now look at the structure of the entire department in terms of the mandates and the service delivery model, and to see in terms of the budget and the resources that we have, how best do we serve the priority needs of the citizen in terms of the mandate, in terms of the service delivery model, in terms of the structure. So, and also to go back to that structure. That structure really was from 2008. In terms of the last departmental level OD process that was done. So we will be looking at that in the coming year to also make sure that there are areas where the OD processes that we were working on were identifying the need for additional posts. And if I look at the OD process that we, for instance, did in terms of planning, which was 2013-14, when the planning law reform happened, there we reduced the number of posts in that areas already by 20. But yes, many years have passed, and we will be relooking at the department structure, so that this question of unfunded posts on the structure versus the number of posts that are vacant and funded, and the resourcing that we need to do into the future, that we have the best information, and that we follow a process to inform that. And then the questioner, and I'm going to ask Dr. Liener, in terms of the equality monitoring, you asked whether you should be worried. We are worried. You should also be worried. Because this is critical infrastructure for the province in terms of equality. Equality has a direct impact on human rights and the health of the citizens. And it is an issue in areas, and unless we have the information and we are able to timelessly respond, then our responsiveness to the needs of the citizens become an issue. The monitoring network is broader than just the monitoring stations that we are responsible for, but our monitoring stations play a critical role. But over to Dr. Liener in terms of that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, HOD. Thank you, Minister, colleagues. So definitely it is a big concern for us, because we've had to reduce it basically from 12 to 10. And going forward, the future, even the current future just for next year, looks extremely bleak for us. In terms of the network. So we will definitely need to look at what do we do with the network. It is not promising. It doesn't look promising for us, especially since what we've been recording in the Western Cape is increasing particulate matter. And so that's basically your dust. And then also we've also been measuring increases in ozone, and that is ground level ozone. So it also there's that contribution to climate change also, even though it's just local, but that link to climate change also then gets impacted because we also then wouldn't be able to respond effectively to climate change. And so it is a concern for us, Chairperson, and we will need to be looking at partnering with industry as well, but that in itself is difficult as well, especially since we know that industry is also battling out there. But for us, in terms of we've got an obligation to the public to be able to monitor and to measure and to be able to give an indication of what the air quality is. Yes, our air quality is better than better than other areas in the country, but it is at risk. And so if we do not know what is going on with our air quality, then we wouldn't be able to manage it. And so it is a big, big, big concern for us. And we are looking for basically funding budget and looking at how can we actually make the network more effective, more efficient. Our infrastructure is aged. We last recapitalized during COVID, and there's just no budget to recapitalize. So it is a concern. Thank you.
And load shedding and vandalism is not helping. We worried about the reliability of the data because we have to make sure that the software updates also happen so that we maintain the integrity of the data and the standards that we're trying to maintain in the country in terms of the data that's being collected. But it is something we are looking at. This has been a key part of the discussions with Provincial Treasury, and not only with them, with Department of Health and the other partners in the One Health space, because we are trying to do the surveillance, and the primary prevention is absolutely critical as part of the strategy. But yes, how do we finance those priority areas and look after these assets? So thank you for that question. Thank you, Dr. Lina. Just in terms of the environmental EIAs and efficiencies, we are achieving 100% of the legislated timeframes. And what's hidden in that is what it takes to achieve that. So it's not only about in terms of the speed within which we make the decisions, it's also the quality of the decisions to be maintained. We defend these decisions in court all the time. And so therefore we have to maintain the quality of the process, the quality of the decisions. And of course, we're looking at the timeframes within which that happen. And the proposal was based on years of information that we were trying to reduce the decision-making timeframe by 30%. So that's the proposal we submitted, saying that's what it would take for us to shift it to a 30% reduction in the decision-making timeframes. And in the end, we could not secure half of that funding. But we're looking at what's now possible in terms of the funding that we have secured in terms of efficiencies that we still want to achieve. There's a lot that's happened. September this year, it'll be 27 years of EIAs in terms of the first set of EIA regulations that came into effect in September 97. And there's been a lot of reform in the process based on the practice. So, major reform, 2006, the regulations were replaced, and again in 2010 and again in 2014. And a number of review processes that have been undertaken since then, looking at the system that we have and what's working and not working and what needs to work better. And then the EIAs as an project level instrument, also complemented by other work. So critical work that's underway is the environmental planning work. So we have done a number of environmental management frameworks in the province, but it is also a need for us to make sure that we working with the municipalities in terms of complementing the spatial development frameworks of the municipalities, that will also update that information, and that we truly want to shift that environmental planning, that it should also look at environmental performance management as an instrument. And there are, in different areas where we've been able to take the instruments to the next level in terms of strategic trade-off. So in places like Atlantis, on the back of the environmental management framework, we did develop with National the environmental instrument that's in place in Atlantis. as an alternative to normal project level EIA. And in Saldanha, we also working closely with the municipality there over a period in terms of the strategic offsets that we're looking at in terms of the Saldanha area. So yes, the lessons learned is an absolutely key part in terms of what we will still require a project level instrument for, in terms of the questions to be answered on a particular project versus the alternative instruments, complementary instruments that we also applying. And yes, the activities that are regulated to project level EIA, significant changes that have happened over the years, more and more standards being developed as an instrument where if it's a known impact and there's known best practice in terms of managing that, then a standard to regulate that rather than project level EIA. So many standards in development and exclusions in development. Already in the province, a quarter of project level EIA that people apply for, approach us on, we follow, we use the maintenance management plans for river work. We do setbacks along water courses and the coast, and we do urban area determination. So more strategic approach, and in terms of that being available to us. But it's an ongoing area of review with the other competent authorities in the country, and yes, work underway in terms of where do we need to go as a country, as the sector, in terms of, I don't know whether the colleagues, whether Zahir wants to add to that, whether Paul wants to maybe come in on that. Looks like they covered. I'll then pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I indicated that there would be another opportunity, honourable members. Over to you, Honourable Moran.
Thanks, Chair. Just to come back to the Environmental Commissioner. And this little book, the Constitution of the Western Cape, demands from us to appoint an Environmental Commissioner. I think the biggest problem that the political leadership in the Western Cape government have is the powers of the Environmental Commissioner. You look at Chapter 9, page 87, 71.3 and 71.5. It's actually the problem that the MECF, by not wanting to appoint the commissioner, it says the commissioner is independent and subjected to only national constitution, this constitution, and the law. 71.5 said no person or provincial organ of state may interfere with the functioning of the commissioner. That's the problem. Why we don't want to appoint the environmental commissioner. Because we don't want to be held accountable by the environmental commissioner. And climate change and the harming of our environment is of grave concern, Chairperson. It can't be left to the personal view of an MEC that don't think that's worth it and will rather use the 20 million rand for something else instead of saving our future for our kids, a healthy environment. That's the actual problem with the MEC. Coming back to Knysna in the city of Cape Town, and I've heard the MEC spoke about especially when it comes to Knysna, the green scorpions. But what we are facing in Knysna now is what we are facing all the years in the Cape Flats, the poor areas. And maybe MEC, the reason why there's this focus on Knysna because the premier is from Knysna. That's the actual reason. Why not having the same approach when it comes to the city of Cape Town? Why getting the green scorpions involved when it comes to Knysna, but not when it comes to the city of Cape Town? Why not? Why the different approach? We don't want to come to the conclusion because it's two different kinds of persons, people that stays in the different areas. That's why there's an approach for this and a different approach for those. We don't want to arrive to that. Because the city of Cape Town and people that stays in Atlantis and Jogailitsa and all those areas on the Cape Flats, on a daily basis they experience, kids get sick and all these kinds of Alvarez. We don't have the same approach, Chairperson. And then, Chair, I just wanted to check the budget for disasters. It's just under 12 million rand. Over the last couple of months, we have experienced just these type of fires that we have never seen. I mean, a week or two ago, we have seen a fire on the other side of the Twitchloaf tunnel. I've taken some photos, and when you basically exit on the other side, it was like in daylight. We have seen fires all over the Western Cape, and I just wonder whether the amount that we have set out in the new financial year, whether that will be sufficient to deal with those disasters. We have seen basically disasters, and we have visited some of them, especially in the West Coast, when it comes to those floods. And climate change is real. We're going to experience the same climate that we've experienced last year. To check whether that amper 12 million rand will be enough, Chair. And then on page 4.1, table 9.2 summary, payments of estimates, program 2. Although they have received the biggest portion, Chair, legislative development, it's and I'm not sure, it's 1,000 rand. Is it correct? One, Chair. Yeah, that will be my last for this round. Thanks.
Thank you. I recognize the Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions from my side. The first question is, I just wanted to know about the allocation with regards to waste management. I believe there was an increase. If we could just understand what the increase will be used for, if there's an increase, and then also what alignment it has with the city, for example, of Cape Town's 21 hotspot plan, and also any priority plans of the districts. For example, I'm very, very concerned within my constituency about waste management, particularly within communities such as Joslip, where there is a high need, and the city often provides for cleansing services. But I want to understand at a more strategic and provincial level how the funding is going to be used to combat waste management, and possibly in a more sustainable manner through, for example, recycling initiatives. And then on the EIA, I think I just want to commend the department on the work that they are doing with EIAs. We know that they are difficult processes because they require a lot of stakeholder engagement. Again, just thinking about my constituency, yes, there've been a lot of developments, and that's placed a lot of pressure on wastewater treatment. And so I know that the province has a limited capability, for example, when it comes to putting a stop to developments that may not align with development plans. But I just want to understand, what is it that the department can do in terms of monitoring developments to ensure that they happen sustainably and that they don't put too much pressure on the networks? Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Honourable Murray. Just from my side, a few items. The first one is on the EPWP program. I was grateful to hear that you want to sustain the numbers there. But our president, I think recently again, reiterated how government is going to support the poor and create jobs. My impression was that EPWP was, in that same league. And yet, if I read the budget correctly, and perhaps please just confirm, it seems to me as if the funding for that project has decreased, which seems to me a little bit pro-poor. It's not pro-poor, it's anti-poor. So please, if you could just help me, and thank you very much for the plans that you are putting in place to ensure, because my visit to Cape Nature Reserves have really impressed on me every time the quality of young people that are just looking for an opportunity to gain some work experience, to gain the skills, etc. And some of them are brilliant young kids. And I was always very proud of Cape Nature offering them not a few-month contract, but a 3-year contract, which really is a great scheme. And it's sorry if I read it correctly, and it seems to me as if that scheme is in danger. The second one is just also again directed to you, Doctor, in terms of Cape Nature. I've been critical of the reopening of some of the reserves after certain events, say, for example, a fire that affected the water supply to the chalets and so on. My impression has been that in the private sector, people would really, because it's a sort of potential source of income, that you would say, well, what's the price of a water pipe versus the loss? Should I now go to a lengthy supply chain management program? Is there then no option for you to fast track, some of the expenses that are required to again put that asset into an income earning asset? And when I speak about income, it seems to me we all know that the income is under pressure, but one of the potential sources of income, especially when it comes to the environment, is the private sector and even the international private sector. And here I want to refer to your private-public partnerships at the WIP collection and so on. And it seems to me, if I again read the budget book correctly, that it's been a positive experience for you. Surely, I believe there must have been some lessons learned. But as if you want to expand that and introduce new private-public partnerships, which hopefully will save us some expenditure from government side and perhaps unlock the potential of some of these wonderful nature reserves that we have. Perhaps if you could just tell us about your thinking in this regard of entering into more partnerships and sharing of resources, etc. And then if I could just ask back to the topic of waste management, which is a serious one, and I'm grateful that the Honourable Maranis and Honourable Marius touched on this. I would love to hear to what extent is our challenges in terms of waste management and what I can call an educational or behavioral change problem, and to what extent is it, let's call it a budgetary and a policy and a technical problem, if I can call it like that. Because it seems to me as if the one can't go without the other. That if people keep on emptying their garbage bins, on the pavement opposite their house or on the public space or on the street corner, that, and it seems to me as if we haven't shared best practice in that regard, or people have not adopted the best practices in that regard. If you could just help us, what do we do to change the behavior of people and including the behavior of our local governments? And then the last question from my side, in terms of fire, and the minister, alluded to the fact that we are really battling to control alien vegetation in many of our nature areas, and I'm not sure if we're winning that battle currently. Now, it has been mentioned that fire can also be used as an alien vegetation controlling measure. But then we do know that there are a lot of emotions, but not only emotions, there's also damage caused to animals and other parts of nature when we use or when we see fire. So to what extent would you as a department liaise with people to proactively use fire to help us in this battle, can I call it this losing battle against alien vegetation? With that, over to you, Minister and HOD.
Yeah, Honourable Chair, and last from me on the Environmental Commissioner, Honourable Maran must look at the date when the Constitution was published. And after that date, a lot of legislative changes has happened, etc. So we cannot read one or two sentences. We really don't have a problem anybody having oversight over us or be held accountable. And I think in the previous occasion, the department provided to this committee the whole reasoning why, and we can resend it if you're interested in that. On Knysna, it's not because of the Premier has any interest or there's a crisis in Knysna. I mean, if you found a body in a reservoir, from the reservoir, the water already passed through a what they call it now, a purification plant, etc. So it's directly to the homes. We found a body in this reservoir. It's mad. It's crazy. I will never in my life drink water in Knysna again. So it's just one of those things. So you need to act. And from the Green Scorpion side, there's no agenda. They act against everybody that's transgressing. Ask the colleagues in George, ask the colleagues in Swellendam, ask anybody in Cape Town. I think this at the stage there was something like 18 directives on Milnerton. We also work with them. Yes, we use the law, but we also work with the municipalities. We don't unnecessarily want to go into court because they must fix their problems. And if a municipality's got a 5 billion rand budget to fix the problem, then we work with them and we'll push them. And now there's a task team that will work with NISNA, and NISNA's leadership will need to step up. It's nothing to do with politics. We need to clear it down. We need to solve the refuge issue, and we need to solve the water issue. We then need to look at their finances, solve the crisis there. So it's not that we focus on one municipality. There's a couple of municipalities that do struggle because of various reasons, but there's no agenda behind it but good governance. We owe it to the people of that town, so we need to work together to try and land good governance within that space. So with that, over to you.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to ask Cape Nature to come in on Member Moran's question on the disaster management, and also, Chair, your question on the fires. And then maybe Cape Nature also wants to already respond to the question in terms of the expanded public works programs as well, and the public-private partnerships. So there were those disaster management question, expanded public works, and public-private partnership question to Cape Nature. And then I will ask for the CFO to come in on the legislative development on page 401, that question by Member Baran. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Chair, honourable members, colleagues. I think we'll take the 3 categories of questions. I'll share 1 or 2 with our CFO and Mr. Ismail, who handles the tourism activities. Chair, you are correct. EPWP budget has decreased, and that was an internal decision in Cape Nature. That was passed on from national down to the department and to us. So we're motivated. We don't want to decrease the program, and this is why internally we moved some of our allocation around so that we don't decrease our job numbers target for next year. We maintained it as what we had this year, so we didn't pass on that into our operations. But it is troubling. We do rely as Cape Nature, feed EPWP for those wonderful young people you and other guests meet in terms of maintenance of the reserves, fire management, proactive fire management, alien invasives, fire breaks. So we are reliant on them. We've grown accustomed to them, and we want to see the program expanded. In addition to EPWP, we also access some other Krunsebenza opportunities as well, where we bring in other young people. These young people are the category of having at least 1 qualification, so they do other activities as well. But we do have a focus, and we're hoping that EPWP will be restored or grown to the potential to attract these people. On the reopening of reserves, being fairly new to Cape Nature, I can say that the deviation process in Cape Nature works well. We have a approved process by the Auditor General that we can deviate for minor repairs and fixings where we can do that. And generally, Mr. Ismail plans that around peak seasons. And for instance, Tweedatour, we're trying to get ready before the Easter weekend, so the water that was burnt, pipes, will be replaced. Maybe Mr. Ismail can just say how we handle reopening after disasters, and specifically maybe use the example of Tweedatour. Thanks.
Thank you, CEO. Yeah, it depends on the nature of the damage. We've walked the entire water line at Tweedatour, and it's not just a matter of replacing the pipe. You literally have to redo the entire reticulation system that goes to the ablutions, the sewerage, the toilets, all of that. So we're pushing hard to get that process underway so we can open before the Easter weekend and the school holidays. And it depends, each reserve, the nature of the damage, the extent of the damage. There is some leeway, as the CEO has mentioned, where we can give reserve managers emergency procurement access where they can do smaller things, but not big ticket items. We're talking about millions of rands of infrastructure. So there is some form of leeway that they can have a rapid response to maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. And then what we try and do is when we do have to fix something, we try and future-proof it a little bit. And that then impacts the budget because it's not just repairing like for like. We want it to at least try and withstand the next flood or fire. So it's a little more than a like for like because we want to build in some future proofing on that. Then on the PPPs, like to hope, we have learned lessons. And the lessons were on both sides. One, it is a way to develop niche products, and I'll come back to Mr. Ismail on this. And so, yes, there is scope on that, and we've learned lessons on that. And on the other side, there is a risk associated with that. And the risk is normally the bulk infrastructure to the PPP. So the PPP normally delivers a very good standard of product. Normally it's a niche market, higher end, but roads, bridges that do get taken out by floods and fires, that risk then remains with government and the department. And then you have a PPP partner says, I have my infrastructure and you're responsible for the bulk infrastructure to get people here. So that risk, we have to look at who owns the risk over the 10, 20, 30 years of PPPs. So we have learned some lessons. In fact, we tabled this specifically as a lessons learned report at our board committee in the last round on PPE, triple Ps, and going forward identified some projects as in the next round of PPEs, but going in with the lessons learned on both sides. Maybe Mr. Ismail can come in on that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, CL. We've registered an additional 3 PPPs with Provincial and National Treasury. It's for Lamidberg Nature Reserve, Walker Bay Nature Reserve, and then also Kochelberg Nature Reserve. There's a site called Buffelstal. Those are the 3 PPPs that we have registered. So it's at early stages, and we're engaging with both Provincial and National Treasury on looking at the potential and unlocking those sites. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Chair, on use of fire for alien invasives. It is very emotive, especially people looking at setting an intentional fire after the summer season that we've had. The theory is that it is the most cost-effective way. You gain more on clearing invasives than taking out some of your local biodiversity. That's the theory of it. The Greater Cape Town Water Project with the NGO, the Nature Conservation, is going to trial the use of fire in the next quarter. I am meeting with their South African coordinator on the 14th, which is this week Thursday, to understand how we message that and how the lessons we learn on that, and in and around the Cape Nature assets. But the communication and the messaging to the public before, during, and after will be key, because the normal reaction to a fire is our normal reaction to a fire, that surely there's a better way to do this. But the theory of it is that it's the most cost-effective way of clearing large tracts of alien invasives, possibly even for some of the hard-to-reach areas, the high-angle areas or high areas. The only thing to come back, Mohammed, do you want to add anything on EPWP? All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, HOD.
Thank you, Chairperson. There was we still had the question on the page 401, and just to ask the CFO to speak to that on the legislative development.
Thank you, HOD. So yeah, the 1,000 rand, it's a nominal amount that we are providing for that particular sub-program. We just had a discussion yesterday with Provincial Treasury. We're working within the space of the environmental budget program structure. So if you don't use or don't have an amount against the structure, the particular sub-program, then the National Treasury will close down that structure. So it's a bit of a budget technicality that the nominal amount is being provided for. That being said, there are quite a number of officials involved within critical legislation processes on the national level, providing comment and input and also to structure those legislative developments on a national level. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. There was the question on the waste management in terms of whether it be a behavior change or a budget issue. was also recently discussed in the national Mintic with the national department and the other provinces, where the fact that it's both a budget and a behavior change challenge. And therefore the interventions that are underway are also looking at addressing both. But I'm going to ask the colleague Salim Haider, the Director of Waste Management, to also to come in on this, and also in response also speak to Honourable Member Mari's question in terms of the increase in terms of the waste or the budget allocation for waste management and our alignment in terms of working with the municipalities. Both the city and the others in terms of the initiatives, and yes, focus on that it's not just about the waste disposal to landfill, that there's a lot of work underway in terms of the diversion from landfill and related waste reduction activities. Colin?
Thank you, HOD. I think I'm going to start off with the issue around funding. There has been a slight increase, and we've also been fortunate to receive some funding from various sources from Treasury as well in terms of addressing compliance issues. So the area around topographical studies commenced last year, and we'll be completing that in this current financial year. And then there's also been priority funding that we received. The one project has since been, it's in the process of being completed now, and that was to do the external audits. And we are hoping to have the transfer of funds also to the various municipalities where we want to install boreholes and also have these monitored as well, because just to ensure that their water quality is not compromised at a lot of these sort of disposal facilities that's out there. There's also the 500,000 that has been received, and this also ties in with regards to vulnerable communities within the city of Cape Town. So this is actually to start up a repair and refurbish educational component to train people, particularly from these disadvantaged and socially challenged sort of environments, to actually repair household appliances, kitchen appliances, etc. So not only less wastage, but they also be taught a skill with regards to the enhancement of these sort of materials. And the target is actually women in particular that we want to train up so that we can actually create that sort of social well-being at the same time in addressing a lot of the waste management issues as well. With regards to the question on the extent of changing behavior, this has often come up. We've just recently had our workshops on illegal dumping, and this was to devise a strategy for illegal dumping, which was also earlier this week tabled at SELGA. Yes, education and awareness is very important in terms of bringing this across to the communities, but on its own, it's not going to do much. We really need to ensure that the system is there to support beyond just putting in the education and awareness, and that would be ensuring that there's proper infrastructure and that there's a complete system in place that can actually take care of the issues. So some of these causes of why we are facing this, let's call it a very sort of challenging situation for waste management is it's been years of neglect in terms of putting the right resources behind it. There's still currently a lack of suitable resources that needs to run waste management. There's a serious backlog for funding that needs to come with it, and here in particular with regards to not just infrastructure but also rehabilitation, capping and caring for the environment. And then of course, as mentioned, the systems itself was very looked upon in a silo manner. We need to really look at this more from a circular economy viewpoint. And also, we've spoken about Knysna itself, but the linkages between Bito, Knysna, George, I think these are also part of what we'll be looking at in terms of the whole support plan for Knysna, so that we don't end up with other problems cropping up later on at some of these other municipalities. So we want to ensure that there's proper infrastructure where these municipalities, the flow of waste needs to be in such a way that we do not sort of create wastage in terms of the money that needs to spend on it, because waste management is quite expensive. So that is something that we would also be seriously looking at. And then just on the issue of illegal dumping that I mentioned, for the city of Cape Town, we're looking at about over 3 billion rand that's sort of spent on cleaning, or 350 million, sorry, on cleaning illegal dumping. It's also millions in a lot of these sort of other municipalities where we're struggling actually for funding. So this is something that we also need to seriously address, and it needs to be a multi-pronged approach that needs to be followed to achieve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Salim. There was only one other question to respond to it. This Honourable Member Marie's question in terms of the environmental impact assessments and alignments with the plans and the implications in terms of service provision to developments. It's a critical question. In terms of the focus on water, just as an example, we're looking at both the demand and supply side, considerations, both at the strategic planning level and at the project level. And just last week, we had the Green Building Council and other role players in the room in terms of climate change, also looking at what should be regulated standards in terms of better ways of doing things, whether energy efficiency, water efficiency, versus things that are at this stage still voluntary as we're busy developing and exploring the best practice. But then on each, at the planning level, in terms of the timing and the location of developments and the implications for the infrastructure to service a development, critical consideration in terms of both the municipal planning and then in the project level EIA processes, where it then specifically gets considered and a key informant in terms of those decisions. But a key question, because we also conscious of the information that we have in terms of the current situation and what's coming in terms of urbanization, the movement of people, the pressures on our services, and with that also the pressure on the ecological services. And therefore, this is a key part of the strategy moving into the future in terms of our infrastructure strategy more broadly, municipalities and province, but also within that, the ecological infrastructure. And as we've been discussing today, there are particular areas within that, like waste management, where there's specific targets and strategies in terms of waste diversion and efficiencies and opportunities in terms of also economic opportunity if one does it differently. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Honourable members, a last opportunity for questions. Any follow-ups that you may have? Honourable Maran.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this will be my last questions. Just on the 1,000 rand. So it's actually a bit misleading because you are saying two things. One, there's enough legislature development at the national level. The second one here is that you don't want national government to close this particular program if there's no money. And therefore the reason for a minimum of 1,000 rand. But not meaning that the actual work will happen in that specific the legislature development. That's how I understand it. 1,000 rand is just there to, soos ons dit noem, oor toe te maak. Then, I just wanted to check with Cape Nature. Besides the issue of floods and fires, disasters, we had I think it was in 2022, when Dovesens was decommissioned as a nature reserve, and the reason was the invasion of that particular area. And Cape Nature at that particular point in time, money that was budgeted for security services was then paid over to human settlements, and said to human settlement, but there's a squatter camp now, it falls under human settlements, therefore it's your baby now. Is there maybe in other reserves a similar threat where people once invade? And if do you have enough resources to deal with security measures? And then, Chair, the issue that you have raised, environmental communication and awareness, raising. And I also wanted to ask the question whether there is actually a budget for that particular program, whether that budget is zero. It seems, Chair, maybe I've missed the response, that one. And also then lastly, Cape Nature. If you look at the department's budget, it's almost cut in half. Half for the department and the other half for Cape Nature. We see figures for the different votes, how much will go there, how much will go there, but not necessarily when it comes to Cape Nature. We know what it will be used for, disaster prevention measures, infrastructure upgrades and those type of things. So whether we will see maybe at the later stage, the breakdown of the budget and how it will be spent over the next MTF, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members that have got questions? It doesn't seem like that. I think just two items from myself. Again, still on the topic of waste management. I note that many municipalities charge the same amount for a second wheelie bin than for the first one. And I've often wondered, because we know that in some neighborhoods we have the reality of backyarders, even 4 or 5 families that now need to use one wheelie bin. And I've been wondering whether there would be value in perhaps convincing municipalities to rather charge a lesser amount for a second wheelie bin because the truck is in any way coming down the street, so that the single wheelie bin doesn't overflow, and that, you know, to manage that excess in waste, people then revert to other dumping sites, and whether it wouldn't eventually be economically wise and see to it that it gets properly treated. Whether you've done any studies or whether you've got any experiences in that regard. And then we've spoken about alien vegetation, but we as a committee also, I think it was last year, visited some areas where we've got a problem with invasive alien fish species. And I've been wondering in that regard, what are we doing? And is there perhaps the possibility of restocking some of our rivers with indigenous fish that may have suffered due to pollution or due to alien predators in those rivers? That then seems to me the last of the questions to you. HOD?
Thank you, Chairperson. In terms of the legislative development, that's really an accounting practice in terms of how the budget structuring happens in terms of across the country. So it's mainly cost of employment that we have, and you see that in the rest of the programs where the cost of employment sit. And as indicated at this stage, National is indicating that unless we have an amount against legislative development in terms of the budget structuring, that sub-program gets closed. So it's not that we're keeping the options open there. That's the cost of employment for the program. There's specific APP deliverables and work that's happening in that space. And as a sector, there is lots of law reform happening. It's national legislation, but a lot of that law reform we also lobby for. We also, motivate for, and then actively participate in their processes, while we also, of course, busy with our own policy and our own legislation as well as a province. Then just the questions in terms of the threat, just maybe, that there was a number of questions to Cape Nature in terms of the threat of unlawful occupation of land, and then the question on the budget in terms of alien invasion, and the question by Member Maran in terms of the detail in terms of the Cape Nature part of the budget. But I maybe want to ask Salim to just quickly speak to the wheelie bin question. Next time Salim will sit here between me and the minister in front of a microphone. Salim?
Thank you, HOD. That's actually a very interesting question or suggestion that was posed. In our strategy to reduce illegal dumping, the issue of backyarders has obviously come up. And this is something that we will possibly take forward as a suggestion within that strategy to see if we could maybe look at what are the municipalities spending in terms of cleaning up. And if you take a portion of that and cover that with a reduced second bin for backyarders, then that could well turn out to be a bigger saving to the municipalities at the end in not having to clean up the same area. The only issue that I've got with that is that we're trying to encourage less waste from being produced and generated. So we actually want to charge more for second bins so that people are discouraged from creating more waste in the process. So waste minimization is at the cornerstone of the National Waste Management Strategy, as well as our own integrated waste management plan. So we need to work on that. So it may be a strategy for the backyarders, but I would definitely not encourage it for any other industry that's there, because we want them to actually start taking ownership of the waste and ensure that a lot of this gets beneficiated rather than put out as additional waste as such. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Over to Cape Nature.
Thank you, HOD and Chair. On the land invasions and the drifts an example, it is in our risk, very highly profiled on our risk, and I'll let the CFO start with that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO and Chair. I think in terms of response to the land invasion question, I do believe that our operations colleagues, the retired Dr. Barth, did present to the committee a detailed report in terms of the risk assessment with regards to land invasion and those areas where it is a risk. So it is a threat and a risk, and therefore there are mitigation measures already put in place. Part of those mitigation measures was that from our surplus that we generated a few years ago, at least 8 million rand was set aside to provide fencing and other security measures to prevent land invasion. Some of the lessons learned from the drift sands was that you need to have adequate fencing in place, and it's obviously difficult. We've got over 1,000 hectares of land to manage. So obviously in the hotspot areas, we are looking at firstly implementing fencing. It's a partnership. We are engaging with Considera at this point in time to be our agent to run the process and project manage the implementation of those fences. And together with that, it's mainly the early and rapid detection and response. So the moment you see any sort of dwelling or structure being erected as a preliminary, is to make sure that that doesn't happen, and to make sure that there's early rapid response. That means a lot of security costs, and to have security services available on hand all the time monitoring the situation. So we do have budget allocated specifically for that to prevent that aspect. So that's in terms of the land invasion. Then the details of the Cape Nature budget in the Blue Book on page 427, table A3 indicates the budget for the public entity, and that's consistent with the way public entity information is presented for all public entities provincially and nationally. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you very much. There's also an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions and to add to this debate. We've not had an indication from any member of the public as to our invitation for them to join. But you are also members of the public, and I know it may be career limiting, but you are also welcome to ask questions to the Minister and the HOD. No, I don't see enough people close to retirement, so it seems to me they're all protecting their jobs. So please, you're welcome to whisper some questions into my ear, which I will then put in writing to the Minister. I know it will come back to you to answer it eventually in any case. So thank you very much. Thank you, HOD. Minister, would you like some closing remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. This is the last within this term. So thank you for your oversight role, for the difficult questions you pose. I think it keeps us all sharp and working towards what we all want. It's a better South Africa for all. So thank you to the Standing Committee, to the members. Thank you for I remember Maran standing up 5 o'clock in the morning, and now he knows that's a beautiful time of the day. That's the time you must walk and run and jog. Then you'll be fit as well. So, but yeah, a great pleasure. And I also want to thank the department. I think we're very fortunate within this department that we've got a very high level of skills, people that's got a passion for their job and for the environment. And yeah, that's what they do. Keep on trying to better the lives for future generations. So thank you, Chair.
HOD, is that the last word? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much from my side. Also, we've come to the end of a 5-year term. I can assure you when you meet again with the standing committee after the 29th of May, there will be a lot of new faces, particularly on this committee. From my side, I want to say thank you very much, not only for the answers to the questions, Minister, but particularly for the work that you are doing in to the advantage of all the citizens of the Western Cape, helping us from creating a healthy environment, an environment on which we can, I think, justifiably be proud, for dealing with the challenges of the rapid urbanization that is not unique to the Western Cape nor to South Africa. But I do know that internationally we have a lot of challenges to ensure that people get enough fresh water to drink, that they have clean air to breathe, that they have healthy spaces, safe spaces in which to move. I also want to say thank you very much, because we as a province have got this Growth for Jobs initiative, and that is not limited to the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, etc. A lot in terms of economic growth and so on also depend on the way in which we manage our resources. Where do we allow mining and where do we prohibit mining? Where do we encourage people to tread onto land, and which areas do we say, no, this is too sensitive, we cannot have feet on these pieces of land, etc. So please also see your contribution, not only in that smaller space, but also in the bigger scheme of things in terms of a brighter future for South Africa. May I just add that I see all political parties are currently promising an acceleration in economic growth for South Africa. And I can just hope that this department will be ready when those multitude of developmental proposals and so on are coming your way. I am concerned that many of our local governments have got current backlogs in terms of the processing of building plans, etc. And I can just imagine, should this economy take off as promised, that there will be a lot of serious bottlenecks. So in managing that, planning for that, with a budget that is not keeping up with inflation and the increases in particularly cost of employment, that requires wisdom from you all to do more with less. And with that, I can only wish you everything of the best. Please join us for lunch. Lunch has been arranged on the 6th floor in the members' lounge for 12 o'clock. I do hope that it might be available a little bit before that. But in the meantime, we have had an extended break early this morning, unplanned one, and just witnessing the interaction amongst colleagues, I just realized that quite often the most valuable time, they say, at a conference is not inside the conference, but around the tea table. So please, if you don't mind, the committee is now going to consider its report on the budget, but you are free to excuse yourself. And as I've indicated, please, it would be wonderful if as many of you as possible, and I do hope I'm not contradicting the HOD's orders to get back to your desks. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you a little bit later in a more relaxed atmosphere. Thank you very much. Honourable members, we just give some 3 minutes for the officials to clear the room. Thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, this brings us now to the point we need to consider the budget as a whole, whether we are going to support the budget, whether we are going to oppose the budget, whether we want to propose amendments to the budget. And I'm being led by you, honourable members. May I start by saying perhaps the default position that I would like to put to you, and that is then open for debate, is that this committee supports the budget, and that is budget vote 9 for the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 of 2024. Honourable Murray, I recognise your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I would second that proposal.
Good. Thank you very much, Honourable Murray. Are there any other views, any other members that would like to record their support or not? Honourable Maran?
Chair, most hours is August decision not to support as per Rule 19 of the 90 of the standing rules.
Good. So the request is then for your view to be recorded in the report.
In the report.
Good. Thank you very much. Any other members that would like to? Thank you very much. Then, honourable members, I'm going to ask Ms. Niekerk how much time she needs to beam this onto our screens.
A minute.
A minute. Honourable members, if you would just give her a minute to finalise the report.
I'll have to ask IT now.
That's fine. Honourable members, I'm going to read the report also for record purposes. Report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning on vote 9, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 of 2024, dated the 12th of March 2024 as follows. The Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, having considered the subject of vote 9, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning in the schedule of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B1 2024, referred to it in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote. In accordance with Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed its minority view that it does not support the vote. Honourable members, I'm now putting that report to you for consideration. Honourable Maran.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, the report is actually a reflection of the decisions that was taking, and therefore it's a true reflection. I move for the adoption of the report. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I recognize the Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Seconded.
Thank you very much. No dissenting views. With that, then, the report is duly considered and adopted. Thank you very much, honourable members. Honourable members, this is probably the last time that we meet as a committee on this particular budget. I want to say thank you very much for attending, for your input, the questions that you've asked, and also for the support. This meeting is adjourned, and you are all invited to also join us for lunch in the members' room in about half an hour from now. Thank you very much. Meeting
Thank you,
adjourned.
members and Chairman.
Thank you.